Good morning. Namaskar everyone. Welcome. Good morning on this morning of Tuesday, the 20th of June. I welcome all of you who are joining me live for the daily news analysis on Editorial Edge. I hope I'm audible to all. If you're watching this live, can you just quickly let me know if I'm audible, if the screen behind me is fine, everything is okay? Yes? So just let me know if you're watching this on YouTube live. Okay. So once again, welcome to the Editorial Edge, the daily news analysis, where we take an in-depth look at a particular topic. We also cover articles not just from the Hindu and Express, but also from the various different publications, different portals, articles that you would ideally miss, say, in the course of your preparation because you are focusing on one particular paper. Okay. So my job is to make sure that you include all of those, but go in depth. Good morning, all of you. Thank you. Thank you so much for your feedback. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Okay. So first things first, our P2I initiative started yesterday, and for those of you who have signed up and were there in the first session, the orientation session yesterday at 6 p.m. Well, firstly, thank you for joining us. It's an initiative that's going to be of utmost benefit to you. I can assure you that. And so let me know how was the orientation session. And if you do face any problems going forward, well, we'll remain in touch. We'll see that it is taken care of. For those of you, again, who are yet to join the P2I or do not know about it, well, I'll talk to you about it in the later part of my class. All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, guys. Thank you. Thank you so much for your feedback. Okay. And finally, so today's topic, obviously, on my Telegram channel yesterday, I had put out a poll asking my members, my students, as to what would they like discussed in today's class. Okay. So the first option was that we go in depth in India-America relations. Second was to understand the geostrategic location of Pakistan as to how Pakistan is important and how it has managed to create nuisance for itself over the years. You know, how it has done that. In spite of, say, not being a major military power or an economic power, how has it leveraged its own location to its own advantage? That was option number 2. And option number 3 was obviously that we go ahead with the normal routine and look at articles from the newspaper. An overwhelming majority of the group members voted in favor of India-America relations. And it's only apt because I think it's 8:10 right now. And so at 7 a.m. I believe the Prime Minister's flight has taken off for the United States. So while he is en route to the United States, it will be best served that you and I quickly understand and take a deep dive into the India-US relationship, so as to better understand and make sense of whatever is going to happen there in the next, say, 2, 3, 4 days. Okay. You will look at it at the lens of an informed student, okay, who is able to understand the ramifications of each and every step that will play out there. All right. Okay. So this is the Telegram channel. Again, this is something that I extensively use, not just to say share my PDFs, but also to make sure that the students have a voice in the type of content that they want to learn. That the students have a voice in understanding and getting their doubts cleared. So obviously, if you want something of that sort, go ahead, join this. This is the barcode. Just scan it and it will take you to my Telegram channel. All right. Okay. So this is the agenda for the day, guys. Over the course of the next 40, 50 odd minutes, we will take an extensive look at the India-US relationship right from the time, say, after our independence. Okay. Just after independence, 1947 onwards. Then quickly follow the chronology of events that has followed so far, the major events, as to what has guided India's approach towards the United States. Also, what has also guided United States' approach towards India. You know, so if you look at the history, it's a very mixed relationship. Okay, from where we have come to where we are right now, it's like a 180-degree phase shift. You know. Complete divergence of how it has played out. So we'll see and understand what caused that change to happen. Why was it initially that, say, India and US were not on the best terms? Why was it initially that, say, the United States and Pakistan were good friends, buddies in fact? Okay. What caused that partnership to break? So we'll understand all of that, and then eventually we'll come to the most recent, in fact, the ongoing visit of the Prime Minister to the United States, and we'll see what the whole visit means in the larger realm of, say, India-US. Okay. Because you have to understand one thing. When this relationship started, say 1947, you were essentially looking at a bipolar world. Okay. It was the US and the Soviet who were the big dogs of the international community. Now from there onwards, from a bipolar, you have essentially come down to a multipolar world. So relationships changed based on power equations that exist within the international community. Nothing is set in stone. In fact, the regular viewers of this daily news analysis will know that in geopolitics there are no permanent friends. Okay, and that your move, your motivation is essentially guided by a fact that you know beforehand. So for example, I'll just share a brief quote with you before we start with this. Often you'll hear that say in the P5, the permanent five of the United Nations, you will often hear that UK, US, Russia, okay, France, US and Russia, they are more likely to say vote in favor of India being a part of the permanent five. You will often hear those things come up. You understand geopolitics when you know that they are saying yes only because they know that China will say no. So you don't create any enemies, and yet you know that your purpose is being served. So only then you understand geopolitics. The fact that they are saying yes does not mean that it's yes. They are saying yes because they know that China will say no. So they don't have to become the bad boys, the villains of the story. So that is geopolitics. It's not, everything is not very crystal clear. It's often very twisted. It requires interpretation, which is what we'll try and do in this class. Okay? All right. So this is our deep dive into India-US relationship. First up, we'll go start from Jawaharlal Nehru, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Okay? So when Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru met the US President, Harry S. Truman, all right? Now understand the situation of the world that time. The world was exiting from World War and entering a long Cold War. Again, you are looking at a bipolar world that time, guys. Okay? There was a bipolar, two power centers only in the whole world that time. So obviously, the two power centers, United States and Russia, both were looking for, say, allies or to expand their orbit of influence. Okay. Now, what is orbit of influence? That you have more and more countries come in your fold, follow your ideology or at least tend towards your ideology. Okay. That you have more allies, if not allies, quasi-allies. Okay. So this orbit of influence is essential to understand. If you're taking down notes, I suggest you use this term, okay? Orbit of influence. Just as the Cold War started, so did this fight, or so did this struggle between Russia, Soviet in fact, then Soviet, and the United States to have more and more countries sideline with them, come and stand by them, okay? So the US obviously wanted India to join its camp. However, India rightfully and thankfully resisted, said no, we are not going to join either camp. Okay, and we came up, in fact, we were the co-founders of the non-aligned movement. Okay, which other countries were the parts of the non-aligned movement? Who can tell me? Which other countries were the part of the non-aligned movement, the NAM as it is called? In fact, if you take a look at it, the non-aligned movement has roughly 120 countries. It's the second largest, say, bloc or union after United Nations. So you understand it was a huge organization. In fact, it's still considered to be one of the finest examples of, say, participation between countries. So you had other countries such as Yugoslavia, okay, Indonesia, India, all of these countries came together, okay, group of around 4-5 countries, I believe, okay. Egypt was there, yes. India was there, good. Who else was there? Tell me. Ghana was also there. All right. You write down. If you're getting confused, write down. There was Yugoslavia, who was represented by their President Tito. Okay. Thereafter, you had the Indian Prime Minister, obviously, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was there. Okay. Then the Egypt Prime Minister was Gamal Ahmed Nasser. Okay. He was there, a co-founder. Thereafter, you had the Ghanaian president that time. I forget his name. Okay, I don't remember his name. And then you had the Indonesian president Sukarno. Brazil was not a part of NAM. Initially, the first co-founders I'm talking about. So you write this down. You had Yugoslavia, you had India, you had Indonesia, you had Ghana, and you had Egypt. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5 countries that came together to essentially form this movement, non-aligned movement, which essentially tells you what? That okay, we are not going to pick sides in this mess of yours. You know, this is between US and the Soviet. You two boys figure it out. Okay, don't pull us in your mess. So this was essentially resisted, obviously. Nehru did not want to go ahead and be the second fiddle to US and be the playground for their interests, rightly so. Thankfully, he thought of that. Okay. The subsequent collapse of the relations between India and the US created an opportunity for the US to turn Pakistan into a weaponized geography. In fact, if you look at it, Pakistan was one of the founding members of the CENTO. Okay. The CENTO was something that came as the Baghdad Pact. Okay. I'll tell you what CENTO is also, in fact. Not very important, but just understand how because you can't understand India-US in silo or just in isolation. You'll have to understand why the relationship evolved based on the other factors and considerations. Okay. So Pakistan, along with say this group of what you can possibly imagine as the father figure of present day OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Okay. So you had Iran, Iraq, Pakistan, and then US. These 4-5 nations got together for a CENTO Pact based out of Baghdad, which is considered to be one of the most biggest failures in terms of a coalition after Cold War. Okay. So, because eventually Pakistan also exited this pact in 1979. But that initial phase of cooperation, no, see, India obviously was rebuffed. India went and said, no, we can't be pawns in your chess game. Pakistan went ahead and had the CENTO Pact with US. So you see, straight away US had a soft corner for Pakistan. No matter what the ramifications were for the say Indian subcontinent or the larger game that was being played, well, Pakistan was happy to be a second fiddle. India was not. Alright. So this gave US the opportunity to turn Pakistan into a weaponized geography. Now over the past decade, the geographical advantage Pakistan had against India, supported by the US in the past and now by China, has deteriorated into an idea that is well past its use by date. What does this mean, guys? So remember the second option that we have wanted to discuss today, what geographical advantage does Pakistan have? Okay, very quickly if I were to explain it to you. Okay, because you have to understand the geography also, how it plays into this. So, okay, let's do it here. Okay. For example, look at this, guys. You have Pakistan here, all right. You have Afghanistan here, China is here, India is here. Now what has happened is, this place is natural resource rich, okay, but it does not have the say population. These all places have the population plus need more and more natural resources to satisfy that population. In the middle stands this country, which neither has the resources nor has the aspiration or the population. But you see how they are a part of this transit corridor between the haves and the have-nots. Okay. Afghanistan has the raw material. India and China have the people who will consume that raw material. Pakistan is right bang in the middle. So you see, that is the geographical advantage that country has. Obviously, it is close to the Middle East. It is close to say close to obviously China. You are also looking at access to Arabian Sea. You are also looking at access to Indian Ocean thereafter. So Pakistan is essentially in a very strategic location, and they use it to their advantage. They know that they are a part of the transit corridor between the haves and the have-nots, and so which is why they use it as a point of leverage. Okay, that their nuisance is created by their geography. Okay. So going forward, please understand that, okay, because it's a very simple concept, but it will help you solidify your answer. So the geographical advantage, which initially first the US took advantage of, and now China is taking advantage of. So that is obviously a huge consideration. All right. And now what we see is that the US is de-risking or essentially decoupling from China. China is deep coupling with Pakistan, and Pakistan is turning itself into China's client state. Now, what does decoupling mean? What does decouple mean? To break away. to amicably part ways, to make sure that you're not dependent on each other. Okay? Because with the rise of China, the more integrated, say, China and US are, the more they will be reliant on each other, the more they will be responsible for each other. Okay? If their economies are integrated, tech is integrated, obviously, no, there will be a more level of cooperation, which means that if one fails, the other will also be failing, because they are essentially what? Bound together. So the US does not want that. It wants to have its own standing, and for that it is willing to go ahead and say to China, you know what, we'll figure out our own ways. Hamare raste alag alag hai. Okay? So this is what US is doing. It's decoupling from China, and China now is using, say, debt-trapped diplomacy, or its, say, CPEC projects and all of that, essentially, to create Pakistan into a part B of China. Okay, that right now the autonomy in source of, say, the sovereign, that you realize, no, that the country has to be sovereign, that it needs to, say, make its own decisions. Okay, that the power should reside within the people of the country. Well, that does not happen there. The power resides in a select few. The sovereignty concept is lost on the country. They are happy to place second fiddle to China, and for that, whatever terms and conditions are set, well, they can be managed. Okay, so this is the issue. Please note down this word, guys. Very, very important. In fact, decoupling of US and China is a major concept. In fact, I was hoping to have a full session discussion on that also someday, as to on which areas are US and China now decoupling from each other. So you'll see that trade, technology, okay, military cooperation and engagement, obviously they have done so previously in the past also. On international forums also, you will see that the two countries take divergent viewpoints. Okay, so that is decoupling, where you are just slowly moving, drifting apart from each other in various other sectors, all sectors in fact. Okay, so once you have understood this, especially this concept, okay, then you go forward and have a look at the Indira Gandhi's time. Okay, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi's time. So again, this legend so goes that one, I believe it was Nixon, one US president in fact was, because again Indira Gandhi was an assertive lady, okay, she was like a person who knew how to put her voice forward in the manner in which the other person understood, right? And so that again did not go down well with the Americans. So much so that they used an unparliamentary word describing Mrs. Indira Gandhi, right? So this whole, say, this lukewarm approach, you know, this tepid approach that started with Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru continued with Prime Minister Indira Gandhi also. So she took 3 trips, okay, March 66, 71 and 82, and essentially it was just there was not a lot happening. Why again? Please understand. In 71, you had the India-Pak war. Okay, Pak in the hands of USA that time, right? Who do you think they were supporting? Obviously, Pak. Do you think that the Indian Prime Minister would have been accorded a warm welcome in Washington, D.C.? No. All right. So, in 1971 war with Pakistan that created the state of Bangladesh, the US supported Pakistan. In fact, the US was willing to overlook all of the atrocities done by the Pakistani army in present-day Bangladesh, because again, Pakistan served their interests. So this accusation, no, that human rights is like only in trouble in South Asia or in Asian countries, you should understand firstly that all countries are equally culpable of, say, ignoring or throttling human rights. In fact, if you look at the United States' history, when it comes to human rights, you will be shocked. You must have seen that picture of that 12 or 13-year-old girl from Vietnam who is running, and because her clothes have been burnt, uske upar the napalm has been thrown or something of that sort in Vietnam. So you see the kind of things that have been done, you know. In the name of human rights, US, UK, all of these countries have done something that has never properly been addressed also so far. And yet, say, you see today in 2023 that these countries will be pointing fingers at other countries. So probably you should remind them. But okay, coming back to the discussion. So US was obviously straight away ignoring the human rights violation in Bangladesh, still siding with the rogue country that is Pak. So the soured economic relationship curdled in 1974. Now India announces itself as a nuclear nation. Imagine this now. Okay. Straight away we announce ourselves as a nuclear nation, which essentially just drives USA absolutely crazy. Okay. India's expression of its national interest collided with the US on its geopolitical chessboard. Straight away you see that it's a direct conflict between India and US now. The interests are not colliding. US, which was backing Pak till now, is now left in a quandary as to, with India nuclear armed, what does it mean for Pak? What does it mean for this equation? What does it mean for this equation? You see, small changes happen because of big things. So because India went nuclear, initially it was obviously sanctions on India. Go ahead, punish these fellows. But then you see that did not deter us from doing what we were doing. And credit to the political establishment of this country that in spite of severe pressure, what we managed to do was that kept NAM in place, but at the same time slowly tilted towards the Soviet Union to make sure that we were fortified, that our security was taken care of. Okay. So we used NAM, but at the same time we also took care of our interests. So you realize, compare that to today. Okay. Where India is accused of, not taking a position in the Ukraine crisis. We are calling for peace and yet we are sourcing fuel from Russia. Similar situation, that practicality is our best friend. There is no permanence in geopolitics. Again, at that time, the same approach was taken. Fine, we will not be, taking sides in this conflict between the Soviets and the Americans. But we will also make sure that we are not going to be exploited because of this in the future. And for that, if we have to cooperate with the Soviets, we shall do it. Alright. So going forward, so now finally you had Prime Minister Narasimha Rao, who brought in the LPG in 1991. Okay. So the LPG in 1991 followed by his visits, that opens the door of economic engagement. This whole throttling of entrepreneurship, focus on socialism that had characterized, the Indian economy right up till 1991. In fact, not on socialism, on nationalization, that everything is to be done by the state. So once the markets opened up, straight away you see that the US is now beginning to warm itself to India. It sees the potential of India suddenly. Okay, because eventually it came down to the matter of, okay, suddenly you see that here is a country that is 100 crore in the making, population. Okay, that is a massive market. It's going to be, in the next 20 years. Can you afford to antagonize that country? If you want trade in your country, if you want jobs in your country, can you afford to keep that country out of the conversation? So see how practicality now changes the India-US equation, because we took the LPG. Okay. The 4 visits by Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, okay, added to the economic momentum. In fact, after the year 2000, guys, you see a visible change in the bonhomie of India-US. Okay. Obviously, partly guided by the fact that you had the tragedy in 9/11, I believe. 9/11 tragedy happened. Okay. You had the 9/11 tragedy. And even after 9/11 tragedy, what you see is that US obviously had their whole take it or leave it approach. That you are either with us or against us. That's what their Secretary of State had announced that time. In fact, President George Bush had also announced, you're with us or you're against us. India's position was clear, that Indian soil cannot be used to mount offensives against Afghanistan. Pakistan, on the other hand, more than happy to give their airfields and this and that and all of that. Okay. In spite of that, Indian and US cooperation started gaining momentum. Partly to do with the fact that now India was a credible nuclear power also. Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee came in and did Pokhran too. Okay. We detonated 5 nuclear bombs, which obviously the US was irked, but the deepening of ties had begun. This is very, very telling, no? That the first time we tested Pokhran during Prime Minister Gandhi's time, Indira Gandhi's time, well, the US was completely lost its mind. Okay, we'll sanction them, we'll do this, we'll do that. And it followed. Same thing happened in 1999, but you see that the sanctions that were so-called imposed on India, they vanished within 18 months. Okay. And the sanctions were also such that it really did not hurt us. It was more like okay, just done so that it is, published. Nothing of a great consequence for India. Okay. So the deepening of ties begins. The positive economic momentum. This is where the love story starts, guys. Okay. Practicality. The economic momentum counterbalances the negative strategic independence. As a result, despite the tests from 2000 onwards, US investments in India begin to rise. Okay. Look at this. See that hypocrisy. Huh? In Indira Gandhi's time, these people went ahead and detonated a bomb, sanctioned them. Okay, because that time obviously India was still rising itself, investing in its people slowly, and we had different challenges also that time. But in 2000, we were no longer the 1971 country. Plus, you had the dot-com bubble burst and all of this had come. Indian entrepreneurship was kicking off. At least you could see the potential, in the country that, okay, this country is going to do something good if they have the right training, the opportunity, the investment. So the US knew that. They seized that opportunity straight away and formed a better, closer relationship with India. And in spite of the fact that we had Pokhran too, also because India straight away declared NFU, the no first use policy. Okay, 1 second. Hi, good morning. Good morning, Kittu. How are you? Just a second, guys. So the no first use policy, okay, that was essentially a part of a nuclear doctrine. Brajesh Mishra, he was the National Security Advisor at that time. Okay, so the National Security Advisory Board, which he headed, they first came up with a draft document for no first use, which essentially said that, okay, we are never going to be the aggressors of foreign nuclear missile. That is no first use policy. Okay, so that essentially was what? The Indian diplomats buying time in the international fora by declaring that, okay, there is no first use from our side. Okay, because again, we were under pressure, no? Jo bhi hai. You had sanctions come in from the Western world. So straight away, to make sure that we are projecting ourselves as a credible nuclear power, that we are not like, say, Pakistan or Iran or North Korea. Our nuclear ambitions are completely different from those countries, which is why straight away we went ahead and declared no first use. Now, many students will have to realize that the no first use is only a, what do you say? It's a paragraph in a paper. Okay, it's something that you have declared yourself. It does not mean that it cannot be changed, rethought, reworked. The no first use declaration in 2000, 2001 in fact, the no first use declaration in 2001 essentially made sure that India would be insulated against external pressures. Okay, that we would be left alone to do our own nuclear development. Now, some might say, what's the advantage you get out of, say, doing no first use? Is it not better to have strategic ambiguity? Another term that you should understand, guys. Write it down because these are terms, you're best advised to write these down in your answers also. Okay, we are discussing several things at once, but once the whole story comes together, it will make sense. So the no first use, now what's the advantage? For example, if I am India and you are my adversary. So I have declared that, okay, I am not going to attack you first. On the contrary, you have said that, okay, I don't follow any no first use nonsense. I'll do whatever I want. Now, which is a better option? Think for a moment. First, that you have said that, okay, I don't have no first use, which means your intentions are clear, that you could be the aggressor. Me, by declaring that I have no first use, I have essentially insulated myself that, okay, we are not going to attack. However, those terms of reference can change because I have put that responsibility on myself. No one asked me to do it. No, I declared by my own volition, by my own will, right? So no first use versus strategic ambiguity is a concept you should understand. Is the interest of the country better served if you say go ahead and declare that, okay, I am not going to fire the nuclear missile? Or is it better served if you say, well, I'm going to remain silent on my nuclear posture, my nuclear doctrine. Which means there is ambiguity. As a nation, you do not know how much should I push that nation before they possibly press the nuke button. Where is that threshold? For some people, if you want to understand, say just after 26/11 happened in Mumbai. Okay, again, just a very recent example. Just after 26/11 happened in Mumbai. Now, is that a critical threshold that say you went ahead and brutally murdered say 200 plus civilians? Is that enough for India to launch a nuclear missile? Possibly no. Say you had the Uri attack, or you had say this large scale mobilization of army from both sides. Is that the place where you decide that you're going to launch the nuclear button? Because what happens is that in such a situation, your last resort, which you often talk about, no, that nuclear missiles are to be launched only as a measure of last resort. Often your last resort is your first action. So where is the threshold? So for example, if Pakistani army has attacked on India and say they have reached up till Amritsar, is that the place where you will finally launch a nuke missile on them? Or say an Indian army column is moving say near Rawalpindi and Pakistan launches a strategic missile on them. Is that again going to be the threshold where you are going to respond back with a nuke missile? Those are not known. No? So many situations I told you, not known. In which situation will you consider and finally say, okay, enough is enough, I am pressing the nuke button? Not known. So that is the problem. Because you do not know how much to push each other. So is it better to have NFU declared or to remain silent altogether and say, you know what, you try and test me and I'll show you then. Two options, okay? So again, a very important topic that requires understanding, guys. So us having this NFU stance, no, that I'm not going to go ahead and attack. This insulated our country from external pressures. And thereafter, the positive momentum keeps going up. These practical considerations that US had based its India relationship on, it takes off after the year 2000. Okay. So by 2004, India as a fast growing large economy was visible. We knew it. In fact, you had I think a political party came up with the Shining India campaign also. Because it was visible that India will be growing. There will be jobs created. At least as a nation, it will come up now. It has got everything in its place. All it needs is a bit of structure and planning. Okay. So the economy was visible. It touched the $1 trillion mark in 2007 and $2 trillion in 2014. Now we are hoping for what? 5 trillion, I believe. $5 trillion is the next aim. Right. So see the kind of value you are creating within your market. Obviously, nations are going to be interested. Not just say USA, but also China. Okay. China also looks towards the Indian market with like all salivating and everything, like because it's 140 crore of us, right? So much of consumption happening, so much of opportunity for companies to come, create and do business here. Okay. And finally, you had Manmohan Singh, the Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and President George Bush negotiated and delivered a strategic milestone, the 123 nuclear deal. Okay. This essentially solidifies our positive momentum. I'll tell you how the nuclear deal is critical. Okay. A deal that powered the economic relationship further and cemented the bonds. Essentially, this nuclear deal made sure that India and US will have extensively good relations going forward in the future. Okay. So, large part of this whole status that you see, from Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, Narasimha Rao, then after that Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Manmohan Singh, and now the present Prime Minister Narendra Modi, you will see what essentially has happened is the turning point happens right around say Narasimha Rao. Okay. Because he opens the market. Thereafter, the positive momentum is carried forward by Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Okay. That in spite of the nuclear bomb that we detonated, he was willing to withstand the pressures that were there at that time. And then finally, Manmohan Singh comes in and just takes it on a different level altogether with the 123 nuclear deal. Okay. So we'll discuss about it in the next slide. What happened? Why is this deal important? And finally, the present Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, he inherits a $2 trillion economy, strategic goodwill, and he has only made sure that he leveraged it for our own benefit. Okay. he has taken that credibility of India international fora on a different level. And the groundwork, much of the groundwork for that was laid down by Manmohan Singh. This is how politics this is how a country develops, Regardless of your political affiliations, you have a consistent foreign policy, which is a hallmark of India, okay? You will see that a foreign policy is consistent regardless of whoever is in power. Whereas that is not the case, say, in the United States, where a Republican will have a different sort of foreign policy, okay? A conservative will come in and probably just undo whatever has been done previously. In our case, we do have a consistent foreign policy. Why? Because thankfully our foreign policy is handled by the foreign service officers, right? So this is important. If you look at it, when Donald Trump came into power, straight away you saw US went into this self-isolation mode. Yeah, they walked out from the Paris climate deal and this deal. They were threatening to exit NATO, all of that. What it does is it sends the message that the country is, it's not a serious country. That it can't be a reliable long-term partner. You see? But on India's case, we have always had a consistent mindset. Like I told you, right from the Soviet days up until now, we have always said that we can't be part of your double mess. Go ahead, if you want to fight it out, we'll sit by the side and clap. However, if I am required to serve my own people, I reserve my right to make friends with either of you, which we do up until today. So it's a consistent foreign policy, guys. Again, an important point for you to remember, okay? So this is convergence of these three things now: the size, the strategy, and policy. See, two big countries, India and US, working together to counter common, not enemies, but common challenges, and a policy now that has been put in place, thankfully, because of all the groundwork that that all the prime ministers of India did. Okay, so it seeks to gain trust in the region, disengage from Pakistan now. Why? Because Pakistan has essentially migrated in the hands of China, and you finally see this coming up, the Quad coming up. Okay, a game changer now. You have these countries that were probably not seeing eye to eye. In 30-40 years ago, we were not seeing eye to eye, and suddenly now we are sitting together on a common fora. Okay, the Quad is a game changer for India-US relationship. Number one, obviously, is the nuclear deal. Number two, going forward, will be Quad. And more on this we'll discuss in the next slide. Okay. So let's look at the nuclear deal, the 1, 2, 3 nuclear deal now. Okay. In fact, I should have used George Bush's photo here, okay, because he was there. So that's a factual error I made, but nevertheless. So the Nuclear Suppliers Group, NSG, it gave a special waiver to India that enabled it to sign cooperation agreement with a dozen countries. Under the 1, 2, 3 nuclear agreement, it is for civil nuclear development as well as for military nuclear development. Both ways. Okay. Enables India to separate its civilian and military programs, and you go under the supervision of this organization, the International Atomic Energy Agency. Okay. If you look at the Iran-US problem, you will see that this organization, the IAEA, has a major role to play there. They are essentially the monitors of, these nuclear power plants. They will come, make sure that you have all the checks and balances in place, that is following the standard operating procedure. Okay. That you are not enriching beyond your particular limit. That your nuclear ambitions are peaceful. Okay. Now again, that is a very, if you have to understand it, it's a very convoluted concept. Okay. It is again to do with have and have nots. So all the present countries that have nuclear arms, now they have suddenly decided that, okay, no other country should have a nuclear arm. Okay. That Iran is not within its right to develop a nuclear arm. Why? What's the logic? In fact, if you have to go ahead and completely disband nuclear arms, or make sure that everyone has it and let's go ahead and fire at each other, if that's the point. So what you are understanding is that nuclear ambitions is between have and have nots. And so this Nuclear Suppliers Group essentially wants to make sure that this should not increase. However, in India's case, it gave a special waiver. Okay, fine. Considering the important relationship that India and US share, will give you a waiver, go ahead and trade. Okay. It refrains India from transfer and enrichment and processing technologies to states that do not have them, and India should also support international efforts. See, the have and have-nots. So India should not go and do this. Go ahead. If you want to trade with us, we are all for it. But don't empower other states to become nuclear armed. Okay. India was recognized as a responsible nuclear state, partly again because of our peaceful ambitions, also because of our no first use, also because, so I'll tell you, if you have seen, say, BrahMos, what's the range of BrahMos? Okay, if you go ahead and read about the range of BrahMos, so you will see that as Indians, the Indian agency, we essentially say that, okay, it's 5,000 kilometers, 6,000 kilometers. We are essentially like bringing it down on our own part. The ideal, the expected range of our target can be up till 8,000 kilometers. But we don't want to, say, make other countries feel threatened or vulnerable. You know, so we ourselves just publicize saying, oh, you know what, it will only fly for 5,000 kilometers. When in actual testing and trialing, it might have gone for 8,000 also. So what is this? India is a responsible state. It does not want to threaten or cause any discomfort to any other country. Yes, we have developed. We know what our targets are, but we are not going to publicize it in a manner in which you suddenly start thinking, what if India were to fire the rocket at my capital? Whereas, imagine, say, another country. Imagine, say, imagine Pakistan only. So if they developed something for, say, that would go for, say, 8,000 kilometers, they would claim, you know what, we can fly for 12,000 kilometers. Irresponsible state. You know, it's a rabble rouser, as you call it, that it is only looking to flex its muscles, show in the market, oh, who I see, I am the big dog. That's not how it functions. So a nuclear responsible state, a responsible state will always make sure that no one feels threatened in spite of the capability that it possesses. Okay. And so you have specific agreements for import of uranium. You have uranium coming from France, Kazakhstan, Australia, Canada, Russia. Please make a note of these, guys. Please make a note of these. Where is it that we're importing our uranium from? UPSC loves these questions. Okay, it will give you a list of 5-6 countries and then ask you to identify. Hi Divakar, how are you? Good morning, good morning. Okay, make a note of this. France, Kazakhstan, Australia, Canada, Russia. All right. Okay, go forward now. So Prime Minister Modi and President Obama's final meeting, we also were upgraded to a major defense partner. See, suddenly we have become major defense partner also. Why? Because if you have been following my class on Friday, you must have known that India is the second largest arms importer. Are we not, guys? All this Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, this self-reliance, indigenization of defense, we have spoken that about that in detail. And so as the second largest arms importer, again, what is involved here? America has a good military industrial complex, I told you, that needs money. If they can send more arms to India, who benefits? The American industry, right? So obviously this has come. Why? Because we are a big market. Okay. So an expansion of the 10-year defense agreement that was renewed in 2015, India will enjoy some of the benefits of being a US treaty ally, such as access to defense tech through the alliance is not a formal one. India is not actually a formal ally of the United States. Yes, that's breaking news now. We are not actually a formal ally. We are a treaty ally. We are a major defense partner, but we are not an ally. We are on the Quad as equal nations, equal partners. Yes, Rajan, that's true. That's true. In fact, my colleague Abhishek Kumar has done a topic on that very topic, China's thorium plant. Go ahead and have a look of that video after this class ends. It's very interesting how China is now going ahead and developing its own nuclear power plant on thorium, monazite sand. So go ahead and have a look after at that later. Okay. So we are looking at deeper military cooperation, COMCASA. Okay. We are looking at better military cooperation now, but again with the caveat that Indian territory, Indian seaports will not be used for hostile actions in the subcontinent. Okay, that is the only thing that India says, that come, have say exercises, do all of that, but my airfields, my ports will not be used for US planes to come and take off and then drop bombs somewhere wherever they want to. That's not going to happen. Okay. See, sovereignty is respected. Unless you impose cost limitations on your sovereignty, nations are more than willing to trample on it. No. So India is very clear there that no, you will not trample on my sovereignty. Come, we will have partnerships. You can refuel and do training activity and all of that, intelligence sharing. Happily we'll do that. But you are not going to use my soil for warfare and bloodshed. Okay. So this has also come up now, the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies, the ISET, an agreement that aims to expand bilateral technology and defense cooperation. In fact, if you look at Prime Minister Modi's visit, it's mostly to do with trade and defense. Okay. Which is why in the preceding days, you must have seen that their defense secretary, Lloyd Austin, came to India. Their Secretary Blinken, he also came to India. All of these paid their, यहाँ पे मत्था टेकने क्यों आए थे वो? Why did they all suddenly come here? Because formalize agreements so that when the Prime Minister visits, they can make these big ticket announcements that see, India and US are now cooperating on say drone technology, or we are doing this or we are doing that. So the groundwork of all of that was laid by these individuals. Okay. Now if you also look at say yesterday's statement, guys, I don't know if many of you are aware of this. Yesterday, Secretary Blinken, Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State for United States. So he was in China, and regarding Taiwan, he said that, okay, you know what, Taiwan's independence is Taiwan's headache. We are nowhere there in the picture. So one good question that you can expect this year is that as a major power, is the US now slowly abdicating its responsibility? You know, the inaction in Ukraine by US. Okay. Now suddenly they are throwing Taiwan under the bus. Is this inaction on the part of US in all of these places a gradual acceptance of its decline? That right now it is refusing to take head on Russia. Okay. And the Secretary of State goes to China and says, you know what? Taiwan's independence is not on the table, not on the cards. We will not intervene or will not do anything. So essentially just, he's cleared the way for Emperor Xi Jinping to go ahead and launch a warfare against Taiwan. Last year, you had the General Party, CPC, So in 2022, October, November, where Xi Jinping was elected as the president for the N number of time. So there, that fellow in his speech, he has said that reunification has to be done eventually. So he is very clear in his goal. Yes. And with that statement by the secretary yesterday in Taiwan, essentially you have laid out a red carpet for the emperor to go ahead and invade Taiwan now. So again, that will be interesting to see, not just in terms of say the US relationship with these two, but also how India comes into the picture. Because what US is looking at is to use India as a counterbalance against these fellows. Okay. But then there is also a tacit acceptance that they are quite ahead in the curve. However, all you need to do is counterbalance. You don't want, say, two big powers side by side. That's never going to happen anyways. You just need to counterbalance US interests vis-a-vis Indian interests. Okay. So right now we are in that vulnerable position where we might get played against the Chinese. However, there is also a realization that India's standpoint is quite straightforward. That friendship is okay. We are in fact friends, come. But we will not be, say, manipulated into being a pawn for your chess game. So if, say, tomorrow you enter into a conflict, don't expect Indian help. At the same time, you must have heard the External Affairs Minister also say that India is well capable of taking care of ourselves. We don't need, say, help from 50 other countries to come bail us out if China attacks us. You see? So that sort of confidence comes why? That is again strategic leverage. That no, we will cooperate on certain areas. On certain areas, there will be no convergence at all. Okay. So I'll ask you a question why I'm telling you all of this. So India's purchase, again, US officials looking to make sure that India's purchase on Russia goes down, that India buys more weapons from US. Okay, let's go forward. So now what's going to happen in the next 2-3 days? The Prime Minister's visit to the United States. Major announcements that are expected. US approval to General Electric to manufacture engines in India for its domestically produced fighter jets. India is buying 31 armed Sea Guardian drones. Okay, we are cooperating in trade and defense, I told you. Okay, made again by General Atomics, and removal of US obstacles that prevent smoother trade in defense and high technology. Which is why Lloyd Austin, Secretary Antony Blinken, all of them came to New Delhi, right? Because again, you're looking at huge money. These will create jobs in the United States. All of this will create jobs in the United States. This is how they will sell it to their public also, no? Okay, we are cooperating in semiconductors because again, Taiwan might be compromised. Yesterday with US already pulling its hand out of the whole thing, and Taiwan is being like, it's the heartbeat of semiconductor industry in the world. So we'll obviously need newer places. Cyberspace, aerospace, strategic infrastructure, space projects. In fact, you are looking at the NASA, who is interested in India's moon mission. Okay. Why is this important? Because of late, you must have seen that NASA went into this dormancy, no? They were the market leaders in space technology once upon a time. But now they had gone into this dormancy. And suddenly they're waking up because guess what? The Chinese have built their International Space Station equivalent. Your one is going to retire in 7-8 years time. China will be the major space player. Can you afford to be behind? No. So suddenly NASA wakes up like, okay. We have to do better than just making educated, informative videos on YouTube. So now we'll suddenly cooperate with not just the countries, but Amazon's Jeff Bezos's project, Elon Musk's project. All of that is what? Facilitated by the United States. Okay. So PM visit is not a question of containing China or anti-China. This is about producing a new balance of power in Asia, which is a multipolar Asia where there is no single power dominating it. Okay. Like I told you, from the bipolar time of Soviet and US in say just post-independence to 2023, the situation has so vastly changed, which is why the relationship between India and US has also vastly changed. Okay. So you have to analyze the merits of the relationship on the contemporary realities. Okay. And so right now in 2023, given that it is a multipolar world, there is no particular power center. Each country dominates in a particular sector or a field. Okay. So which is why India is very clear there that we are not going to be used as a pawn. All we are looking to do is solidify our own position. See, Nalajana, what I'll tell you is, US is essentially, see, it's got to be the big dog. It likes to be the major power. Okay. And for that, it has interests. And it needs to feed those interests through, say, either warfare or some other forms of coercion. Okay, you have to see things from a very practical lens. No country likes to, say, do what it has done, whatever you have written. But then it has its own interests, no? So America needs to look out for its own interests, which is why it does that. It's the practical approach. Every country is run on practicality. Okay, friendships come and go. It's not very important in the long run. All right. So one thing, just look at this question, guys. This is the one that you should probably think and answer to. Okay. Does India and US have shared values or shared interests? Shared values what? That okay, we both had democracies, that we both respect human rights, rule of the law, all of that. Okay. At the same time, say you have these flimsy accusations being made at India, no? That, oh, India is seeing a downward trend in democracy. It is becoming an authoritarian state and this and that. It's not even worth the pieces of paper they are written on. Okay. Because if you start looking at from that lens, then the accusations towards United States are quite huge. That they are still guilty of, say, racial profiling. That a woman does not have the right to choose. Huh? at least in our country, women have the complete right on their body. Okay, that if you want to go for abortion or have the baby, it's completely the woman's call. In the United States, that's a major issue. You still have problems with, say, human rights for the blacks there. Right. So if you look at it from that lens, then every country is equally guilty. So just pointing figures at India, oh, India is seeing a downward trend in democracy because of some random survey by some white folk, doesn't matter. Okay, doesn't matter. So this is it. Is it to do with shared values or shared interests? You tell me the answer to this, guys, because I've given you the whole background of the relationship. Okay. So yes, we do have shared values, of course. Like I told you, democracy is there, making sure that the international forum is strengthened, that we work towards, say, a greener, economically and environmentally sustainable future. Okay. That is all shared values. But interests right now, our interests are converging where? Say in trade, in technology, in defense, in making sure that China is not the only unitary power in Asia. Okay. So, look at this particular quote. Our common interest in democracy and righteousness will enable your countrymen and mine to make common cause against a common enemy. And this was Roosevelt, okay, who wrote to Gandhiji during World War II. See, from that time they are wooing us. That time they needed our men. Okay, Gandhiji straight away said no. He essentially prioritized what? India's struggle for freedom against the British Empire over the war against all of this. This again upset the United States. See, it's always highway, it's their way or the highway for them. You know, you understand that? What does it mean? It's my way or the highway. Unless you follow what I'm saying, I'm not going to acquiesce myself with your friendship. Okay. So Roosevelt writing a letter to Gandhi saying, okay, let's work together against Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. And even though we sent men, material and trade and everything happened, Gandhiji on a moral level was not there. He was essentially like, no, we have our own struggle for freedom. We need to take care of that first. Okay. At the same time, you see New Delhi refused to align with Washington during the Cold War. Okay. It forced warm ties with Moscow for defense. Even after the Cold War ended, India began strengthening its relationship with the United States. New Delhi maintained strong connections to Kremlin. See? This independent foreign policy that we pursued right since independence, that has, massively helped us. The fact that our politicians, whoever was the Prime Minister, carried forward a consistent foreign policy. That our foreign policy is not dependent on the individual, but on the institution. Okay. India refused to work with the United States on Iran. Okay. Made nice with Myanmar's military regime. It also refused to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So clearly, we have our own thought process. That does not mean that we cannot converge in areas of interests. Okay. It's a very delicate balance to understand, guys. That the fact that, say, you started from a position where you were on ground zero. You're in ground zero and you started from there. You had your hiccups. You had your setbacks, you found common areas of interest, obviously helped by the fact that our population burgeoned, our defense industry required more arms and ammunitions, because again we are in a hostile neighborhood. So many things come together and then finally you see this love between India and US now finally blossoming. Okay, so it's going to be a landmark visit. You know, you will see the trade and defense deal that come out of it that will empower India in the next, say, 5, 10, 20 years. And more cooperation between India and US is always a good thing. Good, Anjali. But you have to answer this question. So if you are given a question from the mains perspective, say, can you write 250 words on this? Attempt this, because this will be important. Okay. You can expect questions that will be framed on similar level or line. That reasoning as to where are we sharing values and where are we sharing interests. Okay. It's going to be a question that you should answer at least. Look to answer. Okay. Regardless of wherever you are studying your India-US relationship from. If you have obviously followed this class, you'll be able to answer a lot of the points. However, if you have done your own studies, still go ahead and write an answer to this. Okay. Alright. Alright, guys. So that was the deep dive into the India-US relationship. something that I have been wanting to do for a long time, and thankfully my dear students in the Telegram channel, they voted enough, and so I decided, okay, I have to follow the mandate given to me by my students. So we did a deep dive on India US. Let me know if you enjoyed this discussion. If it was of benefit to you, then please leave me a like, guys. Please leave me a like. मधुसूदन, मैंने आपको PDF दे दिया था, वो ग्रुप में कल आप देखेंगे टेलीग्राम चैनल में, मैंने करीब 12:07 के आसपास अपलोड किया है, ठीक है. अच्छा, बिफोर आई लीव आई विल शो यू द टेलीग्राम चैनल लिंक ऑल्सो गाइज, but before that, please may I request you just go ahead and like the stream. You know, small benefits, small happiness that a teacher gets. Imagine the kind of depth we go to. It requires preparation. So go ahead and like the stream for me, please. Okay. So once again, we started this batch yesterday, guys, okay, at 6 p.m. However, late into the night, the whole team here was answering calls and questions from students who wanted to sign up. In fact, let me once again thank all those students. We have humongous number of students who have signed up. And so once again, thank you. Thank you for your faith. Thank you for putting your trust in us. We will not let you down. However, for those of you who have still not joined, well, this course, the management, the administration here has decided to extend the time. So you can join us. Okay. We will be closing the admissions full and final on the 30th of June, and thereafter, the prelims to interview batch shall not take any more admissions. All right. So go ahead, use this code. Which language you want to go ahead and understand the whole lectures in. Sign up and let's start learning, because time is of the essence and there is so much to learn. If you have been following the daily news analysis, you will know that you need to really understand things in detail. Okay. That misinformed opinion is not your friend. Okay. All right, guys, before I wrap up, once again, if you enjoyed this, please leave me a like and go ahead and join me in my Telegram channel, where I will be sharing the entire PDF of this lecture around noon. Thank you, Nalajana. Thank you. I'm so glad you did. And I hope that you attended the orientation session yesterday. Okay. I hope you did, because one of the most senior-most faculties would have taken that for you. Anjali, don't worry. Don't worry. I have given you history of the whole thing. Go ahead and look at the lecture again. You know, which is why I suggest take down notes when we are discussing, because there's so much discussed. I am essentially discussing, say, 5 to 6 editorials or op-eds for you, rather than just looking at one op-ed. Okay. So it's better if you take down notes and use my PDF so that you're able to conceptualize the whole thing. Then you are going to write good answers, guys. That is the whole point of this exercise, you know. Rather than covering, say, one article only and just looking at it in silo, why not do the whole thing from, say, prelims to interview type of understanding? Okay. So I hope you guys liked it. I hope it was beneficial to you. Okay. Tomorrow also we'll take another look at similar such topic. Okay. Maybe I'll put another poll in my Telegram channel asking for which topic would you like to discuss, or probably we'll just go back to the newspapers and have a look, because we didn't look at the newspaper today essentially. Okay. Okay. Have a very good day, everyone. Thank you for joining this morning, and I really appreciate all of you taking time out in the morning and joining me and learning together. You know, that's the fun part. All right. See you tomorrow, 8 a.m. Have a good day, guys. Bye.